I was an AP World Language teacher for 8 years and read the exams in 2017 and 2020. Here are my top tips to help prepare your students for this coming year's exam. So when it comes to multiple choice, it's really important, I think, to have the students start the exam on their own terms. And what I mean by that is I always recommended that my students open the booklet or, to the section when time was called and not answer question number one automatically. I actually encourage them to flip through the entire section, stay within the section that you're working on, but flip through the entire section and find the group of questions that's either the shortest or appears to be the easiest. If you get all of the easier or shorter questions out of the way first, you'll have more time to dedicate for the questions that require a little more critical thinking or reading between the lines, higher order thinking skills. As for audio-based multiple choice questions, there are a number of things that you can do to boost listening comprehension skills. One of the strategies that the College Board actually recommends, though, and I found was pretty useful for my students, was to take notes in different colors each time you hear the audio sample. I know it sounds kind of silly or a little bit out there, but I actually saw that my students did a lot better when they would take notes during the first listen in one color and then the second listen in the other. They were actually able to visualize where they had comprehension gaps and they were kind of able to fill those in by themselves. So I think that's actually a really good tip. Now, when it comes to the email reply, all right, you need 5 things in order to do well in the email reply. You need to start with a formal greeting. In French, that's going to be Madame or Monsieur. You need to maintain formal register in the entirety of the email. So that's using the formal subject pronoun, but also making sure that you avoid phrases that are too slangy or, like internet speak, things like that. The third thing that you need to do is obviously answer the questions that are asked, and you need to answer the questions fully, not just a one-word yes or no answer. The fourth thing that you need to do is you need to ask a clarifying question, except I always encouraged my students to write 2 clarifying questions. That way, in case one of theirs wasn't understood or didn't quite meet the criteria, they bettered their chance of receiving that point. And then, of course, the last thing that you need to do is have a formal sounding sign-off. But don't require your students to memorize a really long, super elaborate formal sign-off. In French, it would be like, Je vous agrée, madame, l'expression de mes sentiments est plus distinguée, or whatever it would be for your language. Like, that's not required, okay? And actually just wastes time that your students could otherwise be using proofreading their email reply. Instead, all you need is a sincèrement, sincerely, cordially, whatever works for your language. Keep it at most 2 words. Don't go crazy with it. And then remind the students they can sign their names, they cannot sign their names. We're going to redact it, so we're not going to see what they write. For the argumentative essay, make sure that your students know they need to indicate what source they're using in the body of their essay. Make sure that they know they need a thesis statement. So sometimes they'll put it in the beginning, sometimes they'll put it in the end, sometimes they'll put it in both, and that actually works pretty well. Sometimes by the time they've written the entire essay, they've actually kind of figured out what their thesis should be. So I don't think it's a bad idea to remind them to repeat it at the end in their conclusion. The conclusion doesn't have to be a whole paragraph. It can be a sentence. That's okay. This tip doesn't always work for the argumentative essay, so I always caution my students, but sometimes source number 1 and source number 3 are representing 2 opposite viewpoints. So source number 2 is usually an infographic or a table of some sort, but source number 1 is written. So based on what is in the written source, you can kind of extrapolate what's going to be in source number 3, the audio source. So this is true for all of the tasks on the test, but especially the conversation. Students get 1 minute to read the instructions and then another minute to read the introduction and the outline. Absolutely, under no circumstances should your students be reading the instructions for the task. By the time they sit down on exam day, they should know exactly what they need to do for this task. So let them have those 2 minutes to read the introduction and the outline. Remember that students shouldn't be trying to write out scripts of what their answers are going to be because they don't exactly know what the questions are going to be for the conversation. And then if they mess up on one conversation prompt or question, just remind them to move on. The task is scored holistically. If they bomb one question, it's not all over. They just need to really stay on task and remember to answer the question that is being asked and not try and sneak in an answer for a previous question. Students should really understand what 20 seconds feels like by the time they get to the exam. So really practicing within the time constraints of the exam, I think, especially for that task, is really important. And then finally, for the cultural comparison, really emphasize the fact that listing facts is not the same thing as talking about the role that they play in a specific target language community. So I can list off French foods, but the prompt is probably going to be about what is the role of French food in French society or something to that effect. So really talking about the difference between facts and the roles that they play in society or culture is important. Also encourage your students to talk about the target language community first, because if they start with their own community, chances are they're going to run out of time. Students naturally have more to say about their own communities than the target language community. And so by the time they get through everything they want to say about their own community, they've run out of time to treat the target language community equally. So have them start with the target language community and remind them what a community can be. That can be a school, a family, a friend circle, a church group, whatever it may be. They don't have to compare, all of a culture or country to all of another country. And along the same lines, make sure that the students are avoiding stereotypes. We don't want to hear that nobody in Africa has access to healthcare. We don't want to hear that nobody in Haiti has access to technology. These are stereotypes, they're not true, and they don't fulfill the spirit or the letter of what's required of them in the cultural comparison. So these are my tips for the AP World Language exams. I want to hear yours. Please add them in the comments and like and subscribe to our channel.